Alright guys, today we're going to do a video on how to do a top end on a Yamaha Blaster. So this is a Yamaha Blaster, 2-stroke. Purchased it, or actually got it on a trade. Now this one has a specific issue where it has low compression. Now, basically it does run, it does drive, but as you can see I have an FMF Fatty with a Power Core 2 silencer, uni filter. Now, typically when you run this setup, you would run a 270 to 290 jet, depending on elevation and temperature. But in my case, due to having low compression, which makes it run richer, which is very confusing, especially I went through between a 250 and a 300, and I couldn't get it to run. I'm like, usually when you run higher, it creates richer and it will run better with the pipe. In my case, that was not the case. Due to it not having high enough compression, that creates a rich mixture in the combustion chamber, which actually means when you're running at 270, 300 jet, it's extremely rich, which was why when I was revving it, when I had it running on a 300, barely, when I would rev it, it was very boggy, very rich bog, doesn't want to idle, and a lot of smoke coming out of the exhaust. So what I did is this thing came with a 240, so which was probably because the previous owner, when they owned it, due to it running poorly on higher jets, they probably jetted down to a 240 to help that. And it did run. It did kick over on one kick, but this is not the way you want to run it. You run it like this, you'll blow your bottom end, you'll blow your heads, you'll cause more damage than good. So I actually ordered a new cylinder and piston, a new top end kit. It was a cheap kit. Honestly, this thing's not going to get a whole lot of use. It's, you know what, the kit was $60. You know what, if it lasts a year, I'll just do another kit. These are very easy jobs to do, and I'll show you guys what I do. But first, you're going to want to start off by taking off your fender. In this case, I'm taking off this one because it gives a little more access. You're going to take off your exhaust, your carburetor, your intake box, / your rear plastics. And then you start from there. That allows you to get access to your engine. Alright, so next on the Yamaha Blaster, what you're going to do is you're going to remove your spark plug boot. Pull that off, push this aside. And then you have to remove your carburetor. Now, I would just leave the reeds in. It's easier to deal with. Remove your spark plug. That makes it easier. Just in case you drop the cylinder head, you won't damage your plug or snap it off inside. But you're going to want to remove your carb. And then what I would recommend doing is just unscrewing the top and leaving the throttle to the side and leaving the carb out. It just gives you a little more room when you're working with this engine. Alright, so now that we did the compression test, the next thing we're going to do is on the left side, there's this clutch perch lever here. You're going to want to remove it from that swing arm here, right here. This thing right here. So you're going to want to take it off there. It just unclips because that cylinder head bolt has the mounting bracket for it. So you got to take that off. Alright, so we got the cylinder head off. As you can see, this is the piston. Now, I'm having a hard time telling you this is an OEM piston. I'm not really sure. Guess we'll find out when I take it out, but definitely very dark. Most likely quite worn. Yeah, it looks like over there, it looks like it's definitely seen better days. Alright guys, so after we got the head off of the Blaster, what I did is I took my old head. Since I am using my old head, these things are fine to be reused. I dumped in my ultrasonic cleaner for 15 minutes. Next, this is a cheap kit. I plan on doing a better kit eventually if I can get my OEM head remilled, because it's shot. But so I got basically an Amazon head kit, $60. You know, I put in my old Blaster, it worked. Important note: so this is the piston it comes with. This is a standard piston, so it's 66 millimeters. Now this is important with the piston rings. So you see how they have like a little groove where it's like a step almost. It's important that you line it up with that circle. So when these rings close in when you put them in, that it seals on that, because what ends up happening is if you don't put them in correctly, they're gonna bind up and you're gonna have early failure of this. I think that's why a lot of people have failures of this, is that they put them in too quick, they're not paying attention, and they mess up the rings, and it seizes and it blows up. So that's something to keep in mind here. This is the brand new cylinder head. As you can see, it had a lot of oil on it when I got it, so I just cleaned up most of the oil around the gasket area and such near the reeds. Head looks really good, really clean, not many burrs at all. Really clean. So I'm reusing my old head studs. You can get new ones, but I'm reusing my old ones. I ultrasonic cleaned them. I have new head bolts with a bolt kit I have, so I will be using those. This is the old needle pin, the wrist pin bearing. I would use a new one. I'm using the one that came in the kit. I used it in my last one. It worked fine. I also find these have a tighter tolerance on the rod. So I use these. I lube it up with 2-stroke oil previously. Really make sure it's looped up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the piston in. Here's a little note, by the way. When you put this piston into the engine, you want to make sure that little arrow is pointing towards the front of the engine. That's very important. Otherwise, this thing could not run right. It'll probably blow up. So, arrow to the front of the engine or the exhaust port. Very important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the piston in. Make sure you don't lose these. What I'd recommend is putting a little cloth to cover the bottom, because if these fall under, you're royally fucked. So do that. I have a brand new wrist pin. Lube your wrist pin as well. Make sure everything is lube. Well, not too much oil, but just enough so it has some type of movement. Don't use assembly lube. Just use 2-stroke oil. I got a little bit in the squirter bottle. Works great. Alright, so we just got the head installed. Basically, what you're going to want to do is you're going to basically pinch the piston rings, right? While you have this head, make sure you put the base gasket on. Right? Put your base gasket on. Pinch the piston rings. It can be kind of a pain to get it in. So once it's in, once you get it into the cylinder, you'll figure it out. You put the cylinder on, right? It might not sit flush. So what you take is one of those rubber mallets, and you just tap the top of it, the base of it very lightly around until it seats. Then what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to put your base nuts on. These are torqued to 20 foot-pounds, right? But make sure on this side you don't forget this bracket here for your clutch cable. You forget that, you're gonna be pissed off. So make sure that's on, right? Then what you do is you basically make sure you put your head gasket on. Very important. You're gonna have 6 nuts with washers you're gonna put on. These are torqued to 20 foot-pounds. A first round of 10 and a second round to 20. You want to be careful with these because you can snap these bolts. Personally, I would recommend a digital torque wrench for this, because those quick style ones can get kind of sketchy and you're going to feel like you're going to snap it. So honestly, I have a click style. I didn't get a 20 foot-pound click. I kind of just hand felt it. You kind of know 20 foot-pounds isn't really that tight, you know. So that was on. So what I did is when I installed it too, I made sure I lubricated the crankshaft. I lubricated all the moving materials, the piston, the side, the skirt, all of that. Right? So what I did is now I had everything assembled, I can perform a compression test, right? This is actually one of the highest ones I've gotten yet. So I got about 125 PSI compression. With a little bit of oil in the cylinder, nothing crazy, just like a few drops. But we got 125 compression, which is way better than the 90 I was getting previously. So this engine should run healthy. Let me go put the reeds back on. Let me slip the exhaust on, and then this engine should be basically together.